Hey guys, this is a tutorial just to build a map with you guys or show you how I do some of the finishing touches. You're looking at the tavern that I made. This is originally the Yawning Portal Tavern, and this area in the middle, if you saw the original, it's the it's the big hole that goes really deep. There's an upstairs to it as well. This is an alteration of that. I wanted to make a version of it that instead of a big hole was a fighting pit. So we're going to go through how to add some finishing things on here, especially around shadows and light, which I keep banging that drum that it's what will upgrade your maps really easily if you learn how to do that. We're going to focus on a couple of um, asset packs today. We're going to use let's see if I can find it in here. We're going to use the Clouds asset pack to do some cool stuff. And then we're going to use Krager's Shadow Pack. I've said this a couple times on Discord. I think this is probably the most important pack that's out there right now. It's everyone focuses on objects and assets, but to really up level um, your stuff, this is one of those important packs. Another one, which we're not going to use today, is Crave's Light Pack. It's another one that just can really add a lot of interesting stuff to your maps. So just to kind of show you what I've done here, if you saw the other Yawning Portal Tavern, you know it was a different color scheme, so I darkened the colors in general and wanted to go for a different motif. So all the colors in here, especially the wood floors and the stone floors, are all colored a darker. Can even show you. Oops. Be a better example. They're all this kind of darker color here. I think what was going on here is there's another floor that I had sitting on top. If I clicked on the one underneath, you would see that it's got the color scheme that I referenced. Here you go. So what I've done is this side of the tavern has no shadows. And you'll notice if I scan around, everything looks like it's sort of very flat against its particular surface. And you know that I don't like my maps to look this flat. So we're going to go through how to add shadows and some tips and techniques using this shadow pack. You'll notice I do have some shadows laid already. I've made some custom stairs. One kind of rule of thumb is if you have a large area of floor, you want to break it up. Having big exposed areas of floor that are not, it just gets really monotonous and it doesn't look like how floors look in real life, and it just makes the overall, you're leaving a lot on the table if you leave your floors just sort of empty. So you'll see here, I've got some shadows that I've even laid on the floor just to try to make it look like there's beams going through it. You know, creating the illusion that there's some depth here. So with this shadow pack installed, you can see there's a lot of different options you can use for shadows. They typically will sit around the 50% shadow tool, and there's really wide ones or small ones. You can play around with what you like the best. I'll typically stick with small or medium, and then I'll increase or decrease the width of it just to get the effect that I want. See here, that's probably too thick, so I'm going to decrease it in size. I have snap to grid on. That's still just a little too thick for me. I want this to be a board. I don't want it to look like it's something that's standing up too high. And that's going the wrong direction. And then I'll take snap to grid off. And I'm not going to try to get this exact. You can see just even getting it approximately to where you want it can just create an interesting effect that most people won't even notice that you've done it. but even if they don't realize that you've done it, their brains realize that you've done it. So it just, again, helps make your maps just a little more designed, broken up. It's a really simple tool you can use to just make it look a little bit more artistic. And yeah, that's that. So you see me use that kind of thing. And then sometimes, I'm not going to try to do it here, but I'll just show you an example. You can use your blank pattern. And let's say we want to give it slight color. And we'll drop the opacity down. And let's see, we're on layer 1. So let's try and see what this looks like. There you can see I've created what looks like just a different colored board. And if you saw my galleon, for example, this is how I change things on the deck of the ship, just to again create more variation. I won't try to make the whole thing do that today. Did you notice that this is also off? So if I go into edit points, I don't know why that was off, but it's a quick fix. Let's see, so let's look at some other stuff here. Let's go back into our shadow path tool. And this time I want to show you something where, let's try this. So you notice on the upper floor, if I compare levels with the ground floor, you can see that while this is an upper stair, it doesn't look like it. It's too flat. There's no real change between this side and this side, between the top floor and the bottom floor. So I want to try to address that by using some shadows. What I'm going to do is compare this floor. I'm going to drop its opacity so I can see the floor above it. And let's see. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this floor. There we go. So you can see here's the floor above it. I'm actually going to assume that it's darker underneath this overhang. So then what I'm going to do is, using my shadows, I'm at the 50% path. Let's see how big this shadow is. Okay, I want that to be a little bit bigger. Let's see how this one goes. And then I'm going to put this at a higher level. I'm going to go to like level 400. Remember, I'm working on the level below. And it's probably a little bigger than I want. I don't want to go too much into that fighting pit. I'll lay one down there. Oops. Go that direction. Just gonna keep doing this. And for this one, I'm actually gonna transition in with a fade. That way it's a little bit more faded at the edge there. If I take off compare levels, you can see this is the level below. Looks a little bit odd, but don't worry, we're going to fix it. But if I go up to the level above and I compare levels again, you can see I've got a better transition here. So that looks good. This makes it look like if I'm sitting on the level above, it does make it look like the level below is in fact lower. So let's go back to that level below and let's fix this potential problem. So I'm going to go into the pattern shape tool, and this is also in Krager's pack. You go all the way to the bottom. I'm going to find the 50%. So this is what's nice about the pack. You know that the 50% is going to match the patterns that we lay down. And then I'm going to, again, put this on level 400. I might even put it on level 700. Let's see what this looks like. You can see it just blends really nicely. And now the downstairs is all sort of cast in a little bit of a shadow. And I can, oops, backspace if you want to undo a step. And then I'm going to put this all in shadow. Oops. God, I already did that part. Go. Bartender's got a little area to work in. There. Now, it's quite a bit darker, but we're going to lighten it up with some lights later. This is just an example of how you can use shadows and shadow paths to give yourself the right kind of depth. So you guys have seen me do this next part here before. I'm going to go back into my path tools. I kind of like this path for what I want to do here. And this time I'm going to go down to level 100. And we'll take the fading off for right now and see how this looks. I want that just to be a little bit bigger. Going for a darker scene here. You notice I turn off any of the wall automatic shadows. In fact, I rarely use automatic shadows anywhere. And you'll notice that these aren't actually walls. These are floor tiles that are made to look like walls. I wanted a thicker wall that looked more of like this kind of brick. So I just use a floor tile. And I do actually still have walls in there, but they're transparent. So this is a wall, but it's a fully transparent wall because I might want to export this as a universal VTT, or I just want it to reflect or block the light the way that a normal wall would. So I've laid normal walls, but transparent underneath that regular wall. So that's another way that you can get creative with what walls are available to you. And so now I'm going to draw a path this way. And you'll notice it draws it under everything. And it makes sure that where two physical objects are touching or overlapping, that we're collecting the light under them. And I might run it over it a couple of times because I really want the mood of this tavern to kind of match this sort of a much darker sort of experience. And then what I'll do is I'll turn off snap to grid and I'll even run it under the bar. And then I'll run it around some of these objects. Now notice I use I'll show you a different way to do this. Instead of using a path, also in Krager's shadow pack is all of these, it's going to be hard to see in the video, but it's all of these shapes that have shadows, different ways of doing shadows. You can do shadows around corners and other places. If you notice that hedgehog effect of those spikes and it gets annoying, well, this is how you can avoid it, is you can use this pack to do shadows instead. So notice it's a shape, and with the circle shapes you can go really small, you can go really big, and you kind of have to play around with what works best. But here I'm at level 1, and I'm just going to place shadows underneath here. And now that's nice and embedded in the scene, but I don't have that like hedgehog effect and those spikes. I can do it all along here as well, although for situations like this, just using the path tool can be super effective. Oh, that's way too big. I'm gonna play with your distances. Now I want to extend that shadow out since I've got objects here. I want to make sure that those objects are also making shadows around them. So you can see I'm pulling it out further. And I'm already getting a much better kind of effect back here. And then, as you know, I also like to go over my objects because you still need to shade these, or otherwise they look odd. So I'm going to go all the way up to, see, just to let you know, these objects here, these are already at 400, so that means I have to go higher. So I'm going to have to go all the way to 700. Another great thing about Krager's shadows, if you've used other shadows from like Forgotten Adventures, for example, his shadows don't recess. Like what I mean is, if I go and use the one from Forgotten Adventures, I can find it. There it is. Zoom in so you can see this. You see how it's actually recessed a little bit behind my cursor, and that can cause it to bleed under objects in ways that you don't want. Whereas Krager's shadows don't do that same thing. They starts at your cursor, so you can have more control in terms of like where you're laying it down. Let's find my way back to the 50% one. Let's see if this one is what I want. Let me try something new too. Yeah, I knew that was really high. Let's put this down to the 4. Let's try this again. I always go a little bit smaller with my shadows up above because that's how the light's going to work. It's not going to cover everything as much. You know, these are under a roof. There's a lot of reasons why these things would be obscured. So if I cover it up, it kind of takes these objects and it blends them into the background. And I might want to run over this a couple of times. You can always edit your points if you feel like you want to do some more fine tuning. That's giving me some good depth there. Let's see. I don't know. I may want to run over it another couple of times here. Let's see how this feels. Can always undo stuff. See, I like that. I like how that's coming together. Yeah, I feel like Bob Ross a little bit here. Painting my happy little trees. Here I can go back into my shadow tool. Notice in this one I'm using the shadow full circle large 50%, just because it has some flexibility, and you can always spam it more than once, but here I'm just creating a shadow around this pillar. And normally that would have been hard to do with the shadow path without making that spiked effect. But with this tool, it really is effective for doing that. So here I'm just spamming it and creating, it might be hard to see, but I'm creating a shadow around it. I'm going to do that with the other ones. That's pretty good. I'm going to go back into my shadow path tool. I want to see what these benches, they're on layer 2. So I go to 3. See if I can obscure these benches a little bit. because these benches would be more dark than the table around them, for example. You know, I'm even, since I'm operating up above here, I tend to turn fade on because you're just going to have light encroach on surfaces. And again, this may seem small, but when people go, wow, your stuff looks so, I don't know, good. It's these little things that make it do that, even though you're not consciously aware of it. I'm going to leave this one open because there's a fire here, and maybe there's a little bit more light that lands on it. And let's see what we're working with here. Yeah, so not on the right level. So now I'm going to make this just a little bit wider, because now these areas are all the way against the back wall. And yeah, there's some candles on the table, and that will provide some light. But if there's any area that's going to be the most obscure, it's going to be the backs of these tables. And I like the idea of having some villains kind of tucked away back here. And, you know, or like the Strider from the Lord of the Rings, somebody observing from the shadows. And this gives me a nice ability to be able to tuck NPCs in there and have them do that. I'm just going to find some more opportunities to lay some shadows down. Now, these tables and stuff, they're going to also have shadows underneath them. And they're going to obscure stuff that's under them. So I'm going to lay another set down here. Really just separate those tables from everything else. And I can even go back into my pattern tool at 50%. Just do a rectangle here. And just kind of eyeball it. It doesn't really matter. People won't necessarily notice this. Oops, I'm at the wrong level. There you go. Now I've got a nice effect going on over at my tables. I'll do the same thing over here. All right, it's looking pretty good. Now I have some decisions to make over here and try to lay shadows like this. Oops. But that could get problematic. So I'm going to go back into my object tool. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I'm just going to lay down, basically just spamming that shadow tool underneath here. Notice I'm avoiding this side because I think the firelight's going to reflect on there. But I'm making essentially just a drop shadow under these objects. And because Krager turned it into a tool object, I have really kind of perfect control over that. So there, I've kind of brought those into the scene. I'm going to do some other stuff with those in a second. I also feel like because these are pillars, they're not going to really have light fall on them directly. So I might even spam pillars a couple times just to obscure them. And then I'm going to go to my other objects around the room and create some shadow effects under them. Hopefully we see some shadow tools with Dungeondraft that are more like this, more native. I just don't really care for the it's kind of the automatic shadows that Dungeondraft creates. I mean, they're great for like just creating quick maps, and that's a big part of Dungeondraft. That's why I support it. You don't have to learn complex software to be able to do artistic things. But I think that it would be helpful if the software did the art for you for the most part, or at least had it built in. Notice here I have to do something different because these chairs are sitting. In fact, I should probably just describe what's going on here in the middle. These are walls that I wanted to use because they create a better finish. But I had to put like this at level 7 in order to sit on top of the wall. So I have to do some different things here if I want to create some different effects. So let's go back to my path tool. I'm going to go down to the small one at 50%. Let's see how this looks. Oops, and then I need to go up to level 7 above the walls. All right, so I'm going the wrong direction. And make it a little bit wider because this is like a curve sort of stepping down. And I'm just going to go around. Oh, here's my other problem. You turn off fade. Try that again. You can see the effect is this nice finished curve. Now what we want to do, since this wall is standing up, is we want to do another shadow in the other direction. It's too big. So there's a dividing line here. This is actually a different surface than this. One of them is at level 700, and the other one is not. What I'm doing is I'm just creating a change in depth from the wall to the floor underneath it. Go. Now I need to do the same thing in here. This time I'm going to go down to level 100. And I could make this shadow longer, but if I do, I run the risk of this sandpit looking more like a sphere. Like the light will hit it and it'll look like it's rounded. So I'm trying to avoid that by, so you can even see it still looks almost like there's some rounding going on, but it's not quite as pronounced. And then I might go back into my shadow tool because there's going to be some shadows underneath these ladders here. And that's looking even better still. Let's see if I can put some shadows under here. So notice these are all at level 700 above walls just because of the floor underneath them. So I'm just trying to very gingerly put shadows under these chairs, but without putting it on top of this, for example. It's pretty good. Now this is also going to drive some of you nuts, but I think it's important. Think about everywhere that shadows are falling. That might seem unnecessary, but it's not. You notice I've got the shadows turned on in the objects, and I don't like that. Got tons of shadows I could do in this. Let's see, that's probably layer 300. So I'll get layer 400. You can't actually put shadows on top of objects on their layer. You've got to go to the layer above. And I'm going to turn on fade. It doesn't connect with anything physical down there. I'm going to drop to level 100. It's just a little longer. In fact, I'm going to do this. Transition out to shrink. See how this looks. There you go. So it shrinks down as you're descending the staircase. It shrinks down. I'm going to flip it to grow, fade. That way. And I'm going to grab my trusty floor tool in there. Now I've got some shading underneath the staircase. Now the staircase is showing me some depth. And likewise, I'm going to do more depth around the stairs. This is at a higher level than what's down below, so I'm going to attempt to do that, or to show it. Because it's a significantly higher level, I'm going to see if I can make this a bit deeper. There we go. Just a real quick thing to do here. I think we'll go to level 300 just to make sure we're over everything. And we're just going to make some stairs. I'm going to go up to my level above. All right, so my stairs start, go every one. Oops. Maybe I want them just a little more pronounced. I'll over it twice. Enough. There are walls here, so you would technically see shadows next to them. And then the same thing on this side. And I'm going to transition out to fade. And I want to do, make sure I separate my walls over here. This is the outside. So this is where shadows come into play. This is my wall in the middle. But until I have shadows in the right spot, you don't really know it. You can even go outside layer, outside my building. Same thing. Good. Now, if this is like a slight curve, which may not make sense to you, but we'll see if we can make it make sense. Let's back up. Put a point there, point there. We're going to ignore that little artifact because we're not so retentive we can't ignore it. Point there, point there, there. I can turn snap grid back on. And here we've just got some masonry that kind of, I don't know, maybe it makes sense to you, maybe it doesn't. Oops, that's my wall. Getting the feeling like this is the wrong color, so I'm going to grab that color, put it on there. There we go. Makes more sense. Now I want to start to get a feeling for what the light is going to do in the room. So I'm going to light up these fireplaces. Low range, high intensity to start. And then I'm going to do the same thing with candles. Okay. And then I feel like my candlelight is going to cast a little bit, going to decrease the intensity, increase the range. I think there's going to be some light coming off of these lanterns. Notice here, I'm going to go on both sides of the wall so that it balances out the light. Got a candle. Again, other side, that way you don't notice that there's a wall there. And I'm going to make these torches more orange, a little bit more intensity. You can see it warming up and brightening up the area around it. I'm just going to put a couple of lights in here to make that just a little bit more pronounced. I'm spamming these a couple of times when I feel like I need more light. This is a dark map otherwise, so I'm going to try to light it up places. Now I'm going to give these firelight, make that look a little bit warmer. Maybe it's casting it out over the entire area. Same thing over here. I'm gonna warm up that little space. Warm up the bar area. This is where the bookie goes. With a little light as well. Okay, this is starting to look good. You can see that I've created depth. All of the pieces of furniture look like they belong, like they're in the scene. Make sure I've got shadows everywhere that I need them. It's technically no light shining on those. And let's see if I can get underneath some of these objects. All right, so I need to be at level 300. Let's try under. Anywhere there's something physical touching, we want to put shadows under them. And we may not be able to get under these guys. But I bet I can fake it. Just going around them. Your users aren't going to have this much attention to detail. They'll like the overall effect if you take the time for the detail, but they're not going to notice one thing or another. Some shadows in here. And anywhere there's physical objects touching, just to set it all the way you want it. Okay, now the last thing I'll show you, a couple of things. One, with this asset, you can create, I'm not going to do it here, I'll just do a demonstration, but you can create like your own custom terrain. And you can make it look, let's see if I can find an even lighter one. You can make it look like there's a hill in the middle of a piece of land. So if you're working on outside things, you can really do some cool stuff with Krager's pack to be able to make that work. Now, I did tell you that we're going to also look at the shadows pack, or the clouds pack, sorry. So I'm going to turn on my, what's it called? Yeah, my scatter tool. And I'm going to set it to black. And then I'm going to, let's see. So yes. Clouds. And I'm going to grab these bottom four. These are a little bit, I don't know, more drawing types, but these clouds are really subtle. And I want to make this look dirtier and messier. And so I'm going to increase my potential size. And let's see what happens. And I'm going to make this just a little bit more transparent. Oops, that's not the right color. This color. Let's just do this. Make it transparent that way. All right. So now, if I put that down, it makes it look like it's distressed or stained. And I can do that in other places. You can even do it on top of a table. Notice now this table looks distressed or stained. Here I'm going to do it under these tables. I could go over these tables. If I don't like the shape that's laying down, I can just hold down Shift and mouse wheel. And notice if I just spam a couple up on top of each other, it presses it. And then I'll go back under. You can even do it from here. And it just makes it look more interesting. And again, it's just breaking up what would be an otherwise kind of monotonous surface. I'm just scrolling through looking for a size or a shape that I like. This just helps you make it more random looking. Here I've got a bunch of area that I can do this to. There we go. And you can even use that at fireplaces, which I use it a lot for this, to make it look like there's some soot coming out of the fire. And now I've really created a cool, distressed kind of look. I really like that. Maybe there's some mess just walking in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here and I'm going to grab a different color. And I'm going to make, again, a slight change to that color. Decrease my potential scale. And this lets me, again, just do another level of like grind. Like maybe this is where the fighters come out. And so there ends up being some sort of natural mess there. I'm going to make this even more subtle and smaller. You can see I have some on these tables already, but maybe these tables are stained slightly. And the floor is stained as well. Definitely could see some around here. There might be even put it on top of some of the stuff. Just helps to stress it, give it a different look. Again, this is very different from my other tavern. That one was very clean. This one is decidedly more messed up. Again, just really subtle things, but you know, as you walk in, as your users walk in, they won't notice this. They'll get a feeling like this place is a little bit dingier than places they've been. It creates that overall mood. See some more places where I need to draw some paths. It's too big. I'm going to go ahead and transition in with the grow. See how this works. Yep, I like that. And this is supposed to be a piece of wood here. And another layer. Let's try layer 3. Direction again. Hopefully you guys don't think I'm crazy, but we're going to go here, grab this, should see what level I'm at. So that's level 400. Okay, so if we do level 400, it should work. This will be another cool thing if like the Sploot ever implements it, to be able to draw shadows. It'd be super cool. This does not come naturally to everyone, but once I'm done, let's make sure I'm at the right level. See, it's subtle, but again, I think it's important. So it just helps pull the wood away from the floor, and the brain interprets it as depth. And I'm getting real sloppy here, but you can see you don't have to be exact. It still gives you the effect that you want. You don't have to be too crazy with it. Or maybe it's crazy already. I feel like these need to look like they've got more light coming off of them. That's feeling pretty good. This thing looks like there's a lot of brawls that break out in here. It's pretty messy and dirty, and I think it achieves the aesthetic that I'm looking for. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys. Let me know if you want me to do more tutorials in the future. If you saw something in here that you didn't understand, leave a comment and I'll answer your comments to the best I can. And if there's something specific that you'd like to see a tutorial on in the future, by all means, just let me know. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Bye.